All right. Hey, everybody. We are running behind, but we only running behind because we want to make sure that we came on correct for you tonight. Because we have decided, if you notice the title, somebody got 30 years today, somebody got sworn in today, and then in the last 7 days, they decided to reverse 50 years of history in the United States of America. So, I mean, the last 7 days, once again, there's a whole whirlwind of stuff. One huge and positive for black community, one that has black community split, even down so that I saw one person say, well, at least we still have his music. I was like, wow, so very literally had friends that were disappointed that he got 30 years because once again black community is split, that our white counterparts, the them and the other, did not get as much force about it. We're gonna talk about that tonight, y'all. And looking at this Roe versus Wade. So good evening, everybody, and welcome to Lift Moments on the Men. And we have our friend waiting a whole year to bring him back.
It has been a year.
What a way to bring you back to talk about, the sexual issues in the church. And when I say that this time, it's much more. Um, it's the disrespect of body that is amongst congregation and congregants and spaces where we congregate. And so Zay, this is Zay's work at ITC. He will be leading out tonight for real. I love when both of them talk because I just get to listen. I might interject here or there. But truthfully, over the last 7 days, we got a lot to talk about in 1 hour. So Sam, everybody, our audience knows you, but if you need to say some stuff like, where have you been? It's been a year.
Well, what's up, everybody? It has been a long year, but I've been beating this pavement. I'm excited. I graduated this past May from Louisville Presbyterian with a master's degree in marriage and family therapy. I am headed to Greenville, North Carolina, to East Carolina University to pursue a PhD in medical family therapy. And I've just been out here trying to grind and get these goals done because I'm real big on ensuring that they know us, they respect us, and that we bring everything that's needed to the table to ensure that even if they don't like us, they're going to respect us. So that's what I'm about. And that's what I've been out here trying to do, ensuring that Black boys like me, people who come from spaces that I come from and represent communities that I represent, are at the table of negotiations when it's time to speak, and to speak for all people that we represent and serve.
Thank you, Sam. I'm just y'all know I'm normally the one that's talkative. I'm going to be really quiet. Marcus, I'm gonna lead out. I'm going to be really quiet. There are not many people who can stop me from talking. There are not many people that and this is going to sound arrogant, but I don't mean it in that way, that I just think are so much smarter than me. And two of them are sitting on this broadcast right now: Margaret Liddell Conley and Samuel Renard Heath. And so I'm just excited. Margaret knows how excited I am. She's probably laughing, and she's probably going to talk about me later when we get off one-on-one. She's going to probably talk about me about how excited I am. But I'm just happy to have Samuel. We call him Sam on. So y'all, please ask questions. Margaret controls that. She'll see the questions. I sent him a list of questions. He's going to be looking at them now in our chat so that he can answer those questions. But I just want Sam to talk, because if you've never watched this or saw the brother is brilliant, and that's just the bottom line. The brother is brilliant. He is a preacher, and the Negro can sing his face off, and yours off too. And so I'm just happy to have him, and so I am grateful for him to be here.
Zay, I think you're blowing my head up. I'm really appreciative, but I just want the record to reflect that I, too, think you two are brilliant. I say this to Zay all the time when we talk. I remember the moments of ITC where I literally recognized him as one of the smartest beings I know. And there ain't too many preachers in this world that I give a whole lot of respect to and validation to. So I'm going to say it publicly to you both. I respect your gift. I respect your knowledge. So thank you all for allowing me to chime in this conversation with you two geniuses.
All right. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to backtrack. One of the questions I sent you, it says, share your experience with coming out from a familiar perspective. So what's your family? And I know we've kind of covered this, but I want to give people some background Um, you're sharing your coming out, and then you're coming out with the church, and just how have you embraced that? What are you doing? And we're gonna talk about church, the Bible, all that good. So we're gonna get into that. But just can we start there? Because I think that needs to, because this is Pride Month, which we did not plan this. This was all God. That this is the last day of Pride Month, and that we're having this conversation. God, I think, and Spirit orchestrated this. And so talk about all of that, Sam. There you go.
Sure. It's a big thing. I started preaching when I was 10 years old. I'm 35 now. I'll never forget it. I was at Mount Moriah Baptist Church over there on Cherry Street back in Daytona Beach. This amazing being by the name of John Sanders, Reverend John Sanders, allowed me to preach my very first sermon. My grandmother used to sing a song called Count Your Many Blessings. And that was the name of my sermon, Count Your Many Blessings. And I remember preaching, and I would take my jacket off, and I'm just doing everything that I could that I saw other folks do, imitating these theoretics. And yeah, so I have been the church boy all my life. And it's very interesting how God chose me, because I don't come from that background. I come from a family of folks who don't look like church at all. And I love my folks. Let me make sure I put that there. But I am the son of the big time drug dealer, the son of a woman who has battled many trials and tribulations. And I think God allowed my grandmother to, one, be a singer. And she went to church. And it was from her being in the church choir that I got connected to church. And the church literally saved my life. I was somewhere around high school. I was battling with who I was and the things that I was feeling. I grew up in that family where, you weren't gay. We just weren't doing it. That traditional Black family. My mama wasn't having it at all. You wasn't going to do none of that. Like, I remember one time I was working for the barbershop, and I went and got a texturizer in my head. And, I paid, I thought I could get a little texturizer, but my mama is the traditional Black mama. And I think, like most women who are like, no, my son not going to be gay. I'm the oldest out of all my grandchildren. And by the time I walked back home from that barbershop, that lady by the name of Lucky walked me back to the barbershop, and she made me cut all my hair. I'm like, no, ain't no texturizer ever in here. I think my family understood that, like most people, that they had this idea that when one says that they are same gender loving, that means that they want to be a female. That's a whole different conversation, I understand. But just for my space and where I am, that was not the case. So it created a lot of conflict. I mean, a lot. I remember there was times I was praying, and my family was hard. I share my story heavily because they weren't for it. I remember I was praying, and I can still hear moments of my mom and grandma being like, no, God don't hear no sissy. You're not going to heaven. It don't happen. And I'm using my words. I'm being cute. In a few seconds, I'm going to warm up, and we're not going to be cute no more, because that's not exactly.
Well, you can go ahead and warm up, because
it was clear that God don't hear no sissy from there. And I started growing and feeling these different things. And again, I had been in church for a very long time, but I knew that what I was feeling was not in line with what I was being taught. And I'll never forget hearing this preacher preach one time. I was about part of the Baptist church. So we went to BTU and Congress and all of those different things. And I remember he stood up in the pulpit and he was like, God don't hear no faggots and God don't hear no sissies. And this is right around the time when gay marriage was really starting to take off. And there are a whole bunch of dykes and lesbians. And I knew right then, Lord, this is what I'm feeling. So he's talking about me. So what am I doing? I chose integrity. And it matters to me. I believe that God will, truth will set you free. That is a founding principle for me. So I decided to tell the truth and to live in truth. I started coming out in college right around 27, though. I really took it and just decided, I got my own job. I ain't got to depend on the church to pay my bill. What's up, Richard Allen? Thank you for that lesson. Thank you. Hello. I don't need nobody to tell me what I need to do. I'm going to live my life the way I believe I need to live it, in the way that I believe reflects the image of God. Thank God for institutions like Candler, most importantly, the ITC, that helped me understand how to read the Bible for myself and how to come to a full awareness of who I am. But when I did it, the church folks didn't like it. I mean, I have been the church boy all my life. I have been singing at folks' funerals since I was 5. I have been the church boy, for spitting, like literally all my life. They weren't having it. To this day, my home church, where I love dearly, 810 George W. Eaton Boulevard, Mount Mission, they're like, yo, you can't come in here. And if you do, you sit in the audience. You don't come to this pulpit. These days, they don't even want me to grab the mic and sing. I've had moments where they referred to me as an abomination or a monster has gotten back to me, and it's hurtful at times because I think I live my life trying to be the best reflection of what Black male looks like to me. So those terms were problematic, but I recognize the tension that it creates when one lives in their truth, and two, they believe on the level that I believe that living in my truth does not make me a sinner. So that's been my story, but it's been hard with the church folks around here, especially my Black church folks.
Man, so can we? I said I wasn't gonna talk a lot tonight, but I have one question off of that because you reintroduced yourself to this platform, and the vulnerability that was just present was so beautiful for you to say it. And in honesty, the Black church has been hard. So in the last 7 days, we have watched how the Black church has shown up again. Some with muddled statements, but if you read the lines, you can see how they were pro SCOTUS. I'm not going to say pro-life or pro-choice right now. They agreed with the actions, and they didn't have anything else. And that was Black church, whether it was an affirming Black church or whether it was just Black churches as we have known traditionally. And so even in that body, because I love how you mentioned it, most people, when you say, if I say I'm gay, then well, for me, if I say I'm gay, you want to be a man. No, I love being a woman. I'm same gender loving. I have infinity towards the same gender. But how do you think that this is now affected body? Because we are living in this apocalyptic time. We all have been to seminary, so we're living in this end time of one and moving into another era. And Second Timothy was the text I put up. You guys read it. 2 Timothy 3, it talks about what happens in these last days and what are to come. And so as we watch Black church kind of muddle through, how has that affected even your come out story, looking at how other Black bodies will be affected? Because this isn't just about gay, lesbian, Black women who are violated, Black women who go through their own David and Bathsheba story. Bathsheba didn't really have rights. She didn't have a right to say, King, I'm not coming over. Like, what does this look like for the Black church to support or muddle through some level of backing away quietly when it comes down to this space over those who have wombs?
So, I'm going to say something that's probably about to be uncomfortable. One, I understand that apocrypha thing a little different. I think what sticks out to me, though, most importantly, in terms of the text is truth. Just the one line in 2 Timothy that just literally talks about truth. In the last days, people are going to have their own truth. I think what's problematic for me, and what I've been saying to people for the longest, is Black church only likes to think of truth as those who go against what they do not believe. But what they fail to realize is that this rejection of truth even hovers over the leadership and those that represent the institution of Black church. I say that because if we would start having more conversation, Black women, I gotta call y'all out because there is no church without our Black women. If we start having more conversation about truth alone, then we'll recognize that some of the shit that we still believe, some of the stuff that we still support, some of the rulings, some of the teachings, it don't make sense and it ain't truth. But because we reject the ideal of how to even have a conversation, I'm bamboozled at how many folks talk around me, but they never invite me into a conversation, right? Specifically when it relates to Black churches, because the white folks ain't doing it. I can go to the white folks' church and they'll put me on the payroll. They will pay me to have conversations alone just because we both understand the value of shared conversation and there's something in it that we both can pull apart. But we all out here so busy trying to think that our way is the only way, when God is clearly trying to show us that your way can't be the only way. And I dare not even say the right way. But I think the problem is that we've stopped at what we think truth is, and God is trying to speak, and we've rejected God, and mainly because the church has become the biggest idol there is these days. And I don't care what nobody say. The church is the biggest idol we have, and I love the Black church. A church saved my life. I can't say it enough. But we are in this space because we keep rejecting the power that comes from our ability to just have a conversation. I grew up in a church that pushed me to go get educated. They pushed me. My folks didn't come. Ain't nobody else in my family got no education. I'm the first one. My mom and them didn't get what PhD is. She's like, why you need a second master's? Now you're doing a PhD work, right? It was my home church. But that same church rejected the power that comes from just us to have a conversation. But the pastor went and said that he got a PhD, and I went and looked up the institution, and it ain't accredited by nobody. Ain't accredited by nobody.
Let y'all keep talking before we sit up here and get in trouble. Because we know about those pastors. We done had Sam, you missed that one. Let's say we had a whole thing and we got blown up too. I mean, everybody was in the chat on these PhDs that you can pay for $19.99. So Sam, yeah, that wow, what a space to sit in. And as I studied this text, truth is the word that pops up, but we don't sit there. I've heard this text preached, seen, but truth isn't the word. We will go and define what verse 2 says. It's 2 Timothy chapter 3, 1-9. We will go define what verse 2 is. We will define people will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, boasters, arrogant, abusive, disobedient to parents. I mean, we will go define all of that stuff, right? Not even exegetically not even go to look historically on why this was written. But you're right. What does it look like when we move away from corrupt mind, counterfeit faith, and truth is the progression here. So,
and I want to put a caveat there, because one could argue truth is different, right? There's your truth, there's my truth, and then there's somebody else's truth, and we could argue whether truth is the same thing as facts. But I think what's even more important in that is, again, for me, I'm the Black boy who grew up in church and watched and was connected to so many different people. I watched what they did. You know what I mean? Like I learned what they did. I can name them. Respectfully, I don't. I stay in my lane and I operate from my space. But we've hurt so many people because we have only operated in one space of what truth looks like. And God forbid, those who actually did go to school, who won't even speak up and say, you know what, hey, there is something a little gray here that we need to dissect. But we can't, because love is of self.
Ooh, that's good, Sam.
God, ooh.
So you have inverted and flipped this idea of lovers of self. See, because and I'm pretty sure I can speak for Margaret. She'll check me if I'm wrong. And I'm pretty sure that it's the same experience for you as well. Is that when we said lovers of self, we were talking about people who were in same gender relationships.
You talking right? Because that's what I learned in my Baptist church growing up.
But what you are saying is that lovers of self is that we deny different truths because we love our own truths more than we love the truths of other people.
Oh yes.
And so what I'm hearing is that there is a tension between what is truth, because truth is subjective, and what is facts and what is real.
Mm-hmm.
And what is real is that, because I grew up traditional Baptist church. I won't call the name because I'll get all type of messages. And my father is a Baptist preacher. I won't call the name of my father or the name of church. Everybody who knows me knows who he is. And we grew up with this idea that it was wrong. It is wrong. It is still being taught that it's wrong. You don't do this. If you're even suspected of being that, your opportunities are limited. But yet, if the person is tithing well, if the person is able to dress the first lady well, if the person is known to be who they are, but go and get married to a woman or the opposite sex, we'll forget who they were and we'll accept that space. If the person writes a good song, we'll sing their songs, because I grew up under that, and they would tell us it was so wrong, and we were going, and you're going to hell for being that way, and that you can't be that way, and God doesn't want that. But then they would sing James Cleveland songs. And
so you said so much. I'm trying to take notes to keep up. One, it makes me think about the whole thing between the difference between being quiet and being silent. And for me, my experience is I'm okay as long as I don't verbally say who I am. The moment that I actually say it, it creates tension and it goes against. And I know this to be true because I know one too many people who I think are gayer than gay, but because they have not literally said it, they still get the pass. But it ain't no secret. You can look at them. You know what I mean? Like you can look at them, and we know what's up. We've heard the stories. We are aware of the stories. You know what I mean? Like, but because they haven't said it. The other thing is that whole ideal of lovers of self. That's what's also supporting Roe versus Wade. Lovers of self.
The way you went there, because so we're speaking about this in the form of sexuality tonight, not in who you're having sex with. Well, how is this affecting body, and how is this affecting gender? How is this affecting how we see and respect body? And so going back to 2 Timothy, truthfully, God gave me this because I was like, what is the scripture here? And then I go and I look, and what I see is this 2 Timothy. Now we're down in 10 through 17. We're gonna bounce around this tonight. But here's the part that really, and I'm so glad you said, truth is what spoke out. But wicked people and imposters will go from bad to worse, deceiving others and being deceived. Sitting in this space, people think that they're right. People, my truth is my truth. I'm loving mine. I'm disagreeing. We see where parents and children are going at it because children are literally saying, "Hey, how are you gonna teach me one thing and I operate the other way? That you're doing the opposite." But then we're saying the children are wrong and bad. We're looking at how government is approving. Hey, it's okay for you to go buy, AR-15, but it's not okay for you to be able to take care of your own body. I mean, like how? Say how this is pushing, because Roe versus Wade is bigger than what people think. Like literally, after Roe versus Wade, we have approved things that we know go against the movement of humanity, and they operate inside the construct of race, the construct of gender. They're operating in these things we built to make hierarchy. Like even, and I'll say this on the, I don't mind praying during a moment of silence because that's who I am. But what happens to our Muslim brothers and sisters? What happens to, I call them the John 10:15 folks? Because Jesus said, this ain't the only flock I came for. Yeah, there are other ways besides the one you think is.
To the people who was here before Jesus got here.
Yep. How's this pushing?
So I'm gonna just put this out there. Me and my Bible are in a place of tension these days, and I'm really, really wrestling with it. And for me, it's a beautiful thing. I don't make an apology for that. I believe in Timothy when Timothy says, "Study to show yourself approved." Yeah. I believe that. If I didn't walk away with nothing else, I walked away with the thought that one should study. I think what we fail to understand is how much hatred we have literally swallowed and we continuously spew out from even the things that we believe. God. And we do that because nobody stopped to actually have a genuine conversation about what is this stuff? What have we been doing and why have we been doing it for so long? We say things like, lovers of themselves. And in actuality, what we teach people to do is to hate themselves. We teach women not to think that they shouldn't be beautiful. You know what I mean? We teach men that you can't love the feminine and the masculine sides of yourself. So therefore, when they get in relationship with women, they don't know how to actually caress and to hold women's hands because they've never been taught or given the space to do so. We teach women that, you can only lean to one side. And if you lean to the other, then you'll never get married. You'll never have a man. Well, that's not the world that we live in, right? So we get so caught behind these little things that don't line up and that don't make sense. And again, I think it's because people just don't stop to really ask the hard questions, right? We just been going off of what grandma said and granddaddy them said. And these days, we have more tools. We have more things readily available to us. God forbid our children, like our babies got everything. When I was a youth pastor, I'm around here being a youth pastor, and I'm trying to figure out, how to answer these tough questions that the kids are really bringing. Yeah. And they are bringing and they are asking the tough questions. And it is no longer satisfying them to just be like, oh, the Lord said so. It's not enough. And I think a part of that is anytime we don't have the answer, we shy away from it. But the beauty of God is that we don't always have to have the answer. I find that people respect us more when we can pause to say, oh, sure. Can we study this and engage this together? I too am a little cloudy on some of this stuff. But we don't do that. We just gotta be right. It just gotta be our way. It gotta that's the self-love of self that I'm talking about, right? That's what I hear when I hear this text. Like this ability of you to only hear what you want to hear, that you can't recognize nobody else. You can't have a conversation with nobody else. If you disagree, then it's just closed. Like I don't see that as heaven. I don't see that as Jesus. I see Jesus as the perfect gentleman who's always reaching, who is always extending. And if we don't have the ability to just reach and extend, then I think we already messed up.
Oh God. Mm. You know, they say in Radio Land you can't have their airtime, but this ain't Radio Land. Some of y'all just need to sit on what that is, because we looking for the perfect gentleman. I ain't gonna lie. Some of y'all waiting on Boaz, but please go read Ruth. There was nothing gentleman like. It wasn't nothing gentleman like about that story. Even down to him asking the person she was supposed to marry, like, because something happened at the feet. But still, Sam, I mean,
and it ain't the only feat what's up happened at, but we don't want to talk about those stories because it pushes us, right? I love the story of Dinah. I genuinely love, and I don't know, Dinah, Dina, whichever way we pronounce it, I don't know. But I love the story. For me, I was literally arguing in one class where they talked about was she raped or was she not raped? Right? We can debate if she was or if she wasn't. I don't stop there. What I like about it is some people be like, well, the brothers were selfish. Maybe. But if you touch my sister, I'm coming after you and I'm going to wipe the whole city too. And we can talk about what I'm going to do with the possessions later. So I just think that the text has so much beauty in it, but we can find it when we refuse to hear other ways of hearing it, other ways that God may be speaking and providing answers and solutions to other people.
So I promise this is my last question because I got excited. I was not supposed to talk a lot tonight or wipe up my eye because here's a tear that came up. But since you sit in this duality now of theology and the theoretical, how can we turn our ear? How can we start a holy listening act? And I didn't make that up, by the way. It's a whole book called Holy Listening. Y'all go get it. But how can we turn our ear to holy listening so we can hear the whole of what is happening and move beyond an arrogant, abusive space? Because again, last days, people don't like to talk about the last days. We're talking about people burning and going to hell. No, in our distressed times, in our last days, we're sitting in them where we're inhumane to one another because we don't have the ability to listen. Thank you, Sam. So what does that look like to turn our ear to holy listening?
A woman I love, and I'm sure you all are familiar, Renita Wings, talks about being both confessional and critical. And that's where I am. I love my faith, but I can't deny the knowledge that I've received, right? And they sit together. And in this program, coming through therapy, I think one of the best things is reflective listening. Sometimes we just got to learn to be quiet. And that's a real tool that I'm learning. And I know it sounds so basic, but it is so true. We don't always have to ask. We don't always have to speak. Sometimes we just got to practice being silent. Sometimes I just need to listen. In the shower, I'm going to just be quiet. I'm going to try to slow my own thoughts down. Why? Because one, sometimes I do so much talking till I can't even hear what God's saying. God forbid, my brothers and sisters. So active listening, reflective listening. We got to work with our own stuff. At some point, we've put ourselves too high up. You know, folks get mad at me these days because if I come to your church, I'm not standing for the bishop. I'm not doing all these great things anymore because these things to me are redundant and they don't serve a purpose to me these days. We got to start asking things like, why we do this? You know what I mean? Like, why do we do this in church? I started there. Why we do this? If we just start having those types of questions, humbling moments. Why did the women wear hats in church? Little things that help us understand who we are, but we got to start unpacking some stuff as opposed to just throwing stuff around and saying this is it and this is the only way there is. But we got to pause and be quiet sometimes.
So Sam just drove us right into the other part of this text. And Zay over here being quiet, just leaning back, just listening. But nah, that's not going to happen tonight, brother. That is not the lift part of this moment.
Well, Sam said learn to listen.
Really, because
So
in
that's
this,
what I'm doing. I'm learning to listen. I'm being quiet. You know, and I'm learning, and I know Margaret's trying to say something. I'm gonna be quiet, but this is why I wanted him back on. Is because it's so simple yet it's so profound, and it makes you really think. How do we do church? How do we deal with church? How do we do church in a way that allows all the voices while we yet honor who we are and honor our traditions. Like I've watched Sam be United Methodist. I'm not going to call the name of the church. I've watched Sam be Baptist. We're not going to call those churches. I've watched Sam go and sing at these programs until they realized who he was, and then they pushed him towards the back of the room. I've watched this. And yet he is authentic enough to be the Baptist Costal that he is, and yet still be honest and truthful to his. Now there is some points where me and Sam disagree. And one of those points, and we'll get to that later, but I'm just going to throw it out there, is that Sam believes that in order to be authentic, you have to say, I am who I am. And I don't agree with that. Me and Sam have argued about this without arguing about it because we know where the other one stands. I think you can be authentic in who you are because you and God are good with it. And you ain't got to stand up and say, hey, here is the flag. I'm flying it. I am who I am. Or I am this. I can be who I am without saying that. Or you can be that, or whoever can be that. I believe that. But me and Sam argue with that because and we don't argue, but you get what I'm saying. And so we're gonna get to that because I want Sam to touch that, but I'm gonna shut up and let Margaret finish what she was trying to say.
Well, I think both of y'all can, because we're going through, the people have we have pathologized every part of this text. And pathologized just mean we have literally tried to find this ease from these examples in this text and place it on people. So not only have we done it, then we tried to project it onto what we think it is and define it. But Sam picked out, it was one word. And if y'all looking for truth, he's verse 8. And so I want, as men in what's going on, because recently what has become have been, they're the repercussions of what has happened to women, or the fight that women had to put up. And we're not asking Black men how they feel. I know one particular Black man, he talked about his struggle where nobody allowed him to be and rest in himself after a major loss that pertained to a woman losing, but he was connected to the loss. I've seen Black men who they are not on the side of what Robert Kelly did. They're not like, man, we still got his music. Now they're like, nah, what he did was dead wrong. And if that had been my child, if that had been my sister, if that had been my mama, I think I would be right there too on 30 years and I wouldn't care. I go to jail for it. I mean, but we don't get to hear that part of black maleness, Black male. Zay has said it before, and I don't want to say masculinity because that too is a construct, but being a male embodied in Blackness. We come back. I want to go to verse 8. And as the two fake prophets with Moses. So when Moses was there and they threw their rods down and they became snakes, we have Aaron throw the rod down for Moses, and that rod ate up. And so here's this counterfeitness, this corruptness of mind. It opposes the truth. There's what Sam said, the word that stuck out of all the words in 17 verses, truth. So what does it look like from the standpoint of both of you as men? How true are these end times where you are seeing Black people against one another we're divisive in this time about sexuality and gender and orientation, and even ascribing to that people now have wombs. It's not just the women with the baby. Like, we're honoring people and how they see themselves. And you are two Black men who do that. And so what does that look like? What's the perspective that you have, and how, as members of Black church community, whether you're actively involved or not, you have served and poured into and left your mark in Black church community? How are you seeing that? How are y'all moving with that tonight?
So Sam is trying to tell me with his eyes. I know Sam, he wants me to speak first because I've been quiet. So I'm going to honor our guest tonight. Again, it goes back to what I was saying. Me and Sam have this unspoken, that's what I was trying to say. That's the word. Thank you, God. The unspoken disagreement on how you live your truth. And I think one of the ways that me and Sam actually became friends, in my eyes, he'll probably have a different view of how we became friends. I don't even know how it happened, but in my eyes, I believe it's because I'm okay that I know my truth. And I'm okay enough in my truth to allow you to live your truth. And I accept you for your truth because I understand that truth is relative. And so my truth doesn't have to look like your truth in order for my truth to be authentic and to be real. And so there are people who make assumptions about my truth, and I don't have to. And that was the time Margaret would tell you, that was the time I tried to correct everybody when they make assumptions about my truth. But the older I'm getting, y'all can't see it now because I won't turn the lights on, but I got all this gray hair. I've gotten older. I'm getting closer and closer to 40. And the closer I get to 40, the more I understand that my truth is mine. And my truth is not negated by your truth. Because they are subjective, they are relative. And I can live out my truth. Me and Margaret are actually argue about some of this. Because Margaret says certain things, I'm like, that ain't who I am. And Margaret goes, but Zay, and I go, Margaret, that's not who I am. I ain't doing X, Y, and Z. And so we've gotten to that point. Me and my best friend, Natasha Patterson, this is the only time she watches because you came on, Sam. She won't watch us, but because you on, she watches.
Hey, Tasha. Out though. Oh my God.
Text me later, but she watched because you were on, and I said Sam was coming on, and so she actually tuned in. But me and her argue about how truth should look, and so I think that, and I say all that to say this is that when we are able to get to the point of maturity where I can accept Sam for being who Sam is, and that doesn't change who Zay is. I can come to events, I can come to stuff, and Sam has invited me, and I'm cool. I can be there, we can hang out, we can laugh. Now, I'm going to be me. I'm a wallflower. I ain't going to be turned up. I'm not going to be talking to a whole bunch of folks. I talk to Sam. If it's somebody else I know in there, he'll see me talking to them. You know, yeah, I know them, Sam. We went to, I almost said the church name. We went to this church together. Or I work with them at this school or whatever. And he go, oh, okay, cool. But that's just me. But then Sam is Sam. And so I think if we get to that place, we can accept everybody. And I think I answered your question. I'm going to shut up now. I'm going to let the real person talk.
I'm not the real person. I don't think respect, love, or the work that needs to be done requires us to have to agree with each other. Like, you can have your position and I can have my position. And we can be trying to figure out how do we work through that without getting stuck. And for me, that's the thought, right? I'm not active in church these days because I'm Black to my heart and soul. And it hurts me that I can't give the gifts and all of this stuff that I've garnered over the years to the people that I love the most. So I choose, and probably a very bad decision, one might argue, but I choose to I just can't. It just don't sit well with me. And it's the frustrating is because Zay hit it on the head. We don't always have to agree, but not agreeing should not keep us from being able to love and do the work that needs to be done, right? I got nephews. I got little cousins who, if nothing else, they need to see strong Black men trying to make a way and create change in this world so that they have that idea that they too can create some type of change regardless of what that looks like. I think we get hung up in the weeds and we stay there. But what we don't want to talk about is the truth that churches all over the world are dying. And the things that we're feeding and the things that we're working are no longer working. And we've got to make a hard choice. Either we're going to stick to what we think is truth, or we're going to actually engage other folks who may disagree with us a little bit and try to figure out how to finesse this thing together. I don't think we want to walk together in Christian unity. I think we get hung up. Like, if it ain't this way and only this way, which is why we got so many different churches. Let's just call a thing, right? So many different denominations and institutions because folks just wouldn't get along. They wouldn't agree for no reason, right? We've never mastered the ability to just sit in the tension together. It's always been my way or the highway. And I think that's, for me, that's the biggest thing. We don't have to agree to love, to do the work, and to move forward.
Wow. I'm going to say this, Sam, and I think you hit it, and I just want to take a step further. I think it goes back to that patriarchal idea and thought that I'm the parent. I am in charge. You do what I say. And I have some of this. I still hold on to some of this. You do what I say, not what I do. and you do what I say without question. And many of our pastors have taken that thought because they are the father.
Yeah, but your children grow up, and this is the problem that I have in the therapeutic room.
You took it.
Children become adults who have their own minds and who have their own ways of thinking. And you can't just tell your adult child anymore to shut the hell up because it's your house, because now they have their own house and they pay their own bills. So how do we have those conversations with adult children now who are 30 and 40 and not 5 and 10 solely depending on us to do it for them? More importantly, Pastor, what do you do when you recognize that the people who you are telling to shut the hell up are the ones who are paying your bills because you're too lazy to really get out and do anything else? You've never garnered the skills to do anything else.
And I think that's the tension that the church is sitting in. And I think that is the tension as to why the church is dying. It's because the children have grown up. So let's take another text. Children, obey your parents, for this is right in the Lord, so that your life may be long. But let's take the B clause of that. And parents push not their children to wrath. And what we are seeing is that the parents of the church have pushed the children of the church to wrath, and now the children are adults and they pissed.
I just was on a webinar today where we were talking about spirituality and trauma, and faith-based, right? Trauma. Because we dismiss the hurt that comes from church. Yeah. And this ain't just about sexuality. Let's be clear, right? This is about looking at people in a space of respectability and thinking that you operate with a space of integrity. But because you would not be true and tell the folks that you too are human, that you too are human, and that you can't always turn shit to sugar. Hello? Now you've built up this idea that you would never do anything wrong. And when they see you be human, then they can't respect you no more because you've never given them that space to recognize that humanity is a part of what we do.
So here we are. Because y'all know I'm going to throw it back on the text because we say it's a Bible study. Somebody called it a talk show. I think that was the word.
You're not going to talk about my mama.
I love your mama.
You ain't going to talk about my mama.
What I do is I love your mama, though. Love your mama. Respect. But here we are, because we're there. Y'all, when I say y'all moving this text beautifully. Verse 5, holding to the outward form of godliness, but denying its power. Verse 6, denying its power. It says to avoid them before we get to verse 6. All the stuff we said. Because people, they are lovers of pleasure, but they rather love pleasure than love God. Mind you, we have pathologized this when we read it and say that person right there can't love God. Sam said it, but we don't really know what this was saying in this moment because we hadn't really got to the truth because we refused to have a conversation. So what does this look like? Because we don't really know who is holding this form and denying it, but I know that it says avoid them.
So if I can, and I'm gonna shut up and I'm gonna let Sam. I think this form of godliness is what Sam was talking about, not walking or not even acknowledging your own truth. For me, not acknowledging your own truth is not acknowledging within yourself. Margaret and Tasha know my phrase is, me and God over here are good. Me and God over here are good. And I say this a lot when we having conversations, the three of us or the two of us, one-on-one. I shouldn't say three of us, but when I'm talking to Margaret, I say it a lot. When I'm talking to Tasha, I say it a lot. Me and God are good over here. And so, because whatever my truth is, me and God are clear on that. Am I making sense? For one thing, I know I'm overweight. So I don't need you looking at me telling me when you see me, Zay, you gained weight. Hell, I see myself every time I get out the shower. I see myself when I have to bend down and put them socks on. I know it. Now I've accepted it to a degree. I'm going to change some things, but what I'm saying is I know my truth. You get what I'm saying? Am I making sense? I hope I'm making sense. I know it. I don't need you to point it out. What I need for you to do is to say, how can I help you? How can I love you in spite of where you're dealing with? And I think that is the denying the power thereof. Because if we could get to the place where we can say, whatever your truth is, how can I help you? How can I love you in spite of whatever your truth is that I may or may not agree with? If we can get to that point.
But it's the thing, because you asking for something that the text is saying. Because verse 7, the same. Well, I read verse 6 too, so we can get there, because this is the writing person ascribed to a Paul. For among them are those who make their way into households. They have. Let's talk. We read the text, it redirects that 1 through 5 that we have tried to define it to be, because these people make their way into your households. They captivate silly women. Right? That's a whole nother, that might be a Margaret moment.
No, that's a church moment. No, that's a church moment. Mm-hmm.
They overwhelmed by their sins and swayed by all kinds of desires, who are always being instructed and can never arrive at the knowledge of the truth. Again, here's that T word that Sam said. This is what overtook him about the text. Out of all the words here, truth. They never arrive to the truth. Now, we're asking for the church to do something tonight. I don't know if in these last days, those who are saying or ascribing to, but yet practicing inhumane, slanderous, brute, hating moments, I don't know if they know how to do it.
I think me and my friends that are outside on the sidewalk preaching because the church don't want us inside would ask and invite the church to read the text from a different lens. I think the church often reads the text looking outward. What they doing, right? They are the whoremongers. They are the ones doing this, but they never take the text and look within. How does this apply to me? And I think that's what me and my folks who choose brunch over church are saying. That the ones who have a form of godliness, they're the ones that's always in church every Sunday. It's not the people. It's not the homosexual. It's not the adulterer. It's not them. I promise you, I get to hang out with some of them. And if you want realness like never ever before, go hang with some of them. I invite you to.
But Jesus invited himself to. But let me not get into the gospel.
Hello. But the ones when it's talking about avoid, right? We think that we need to avoid them because they're going to do something to us, but that's not the case. And I just wonder what it would look like if the next time the text was utilized, it was look more within. Like let's talk about the church. What we doing and how does this apply to us? Yeah. And I just wonder how would the decorations look inside if we read it from a different lens?
Well, because here's they invite themselves in. That is the part of the text that took me out. I was like, oh, I'm minding my business. They captivate silly women. I'm believing you, is what they're saying. I'm trusting. This mismanagement of trust, this inhumane space. I'm trusting you to make great decisions for me because
that's the church. That's the church today. That's the church today. I started off, and I'm gonna say this again, and I know some of my folks, I'm gonna say this again, but I recognize some of the disenfranchisement, all of that goes on with the power of women. There ain't no church without my sisters, especially Black church. The most brilliant creatures there are. There has to be a different level of accountability and awareness that we hold. I don't call them Black leaders, leading Blacks too. Mm. And we haven't put our foot on their neck enough to help them understand that we don't want just what you've been recycling and giving us for the longest. That no longer works. We want real accountability. We've allowed you into these sacred spaces that we have, and we've trusted you. And the data and the numbers don't lie. Something isn't working.
But go back, because using clinical mind, Sam, is it possible for someone who operates in self-love, not in self-love, and that it now becomes abusive to others?
Rephrase, ask that question differently for me.
And I'm finna finish it. Someone who not operating in the care of love, but like literally, they're narcissistic. That's what that text is saying. That's how I see it. So you have someone who's narcissistic. You have someone who is inhumane and unholy. Now we got to redefine holy. You have someone who's slanderous, who's treacherous, who's reckless. They don't really care what happens. They're swollen with conceit. This is the text. They love pleasure. Like, I got to make myself happy. How do we hold them accountable? Because I don't know if they know what real accountability is.
I think we get rid of them. I don't think accountability means that they have to stay in position. That can go a whole lot of different places, right? Trump. The people support Trump. They love him. Can't find truth nowhere within him. Your truth, my truth, his truth. The people support the Clarence Thomas of the world. Our Black leaders support that.
Yeah.
If I may,
Sure.
when we talk about this sinfulness, Margaret knows I love Dietrich Bonhoeffer. And Dietrich Bonhoeffer talks about that sin is when we impose violently on someone else. We impose on them another truth. And I kind of paraphrased it, but I use some of his words. He uses the word violently, that when we call somebody else to live something that is not who they are, that for Dietrich Bonhoeffer in one of his books can be an example or a definition of sin. And so what we're seeing is that we're seeing what you're talking about, Margaret, what you're talking about, Sam, in my view, is that we're talking about sinful leadership, sinful leaders who are imposing themselves and their thoughts onto other people versus allowing people to be and bringing all of that together so that we can do what we were taught at ITC. Walk together, children. Don't get weary. How do we do that?
Zay, I wish I could pinpoint the scholars like you just did, but there's another one who talks about sin as missing the mark, right? For me, that's what I hear. There's another who talks about cheap grace.
That's Dietrich Bonhoeffer.
We've been given cheap grace for far too long.
Yeah.
For far too long. And we've allowed people to just continue because, that's the Lord's person.
Yeah.
We all the Lord's person.
We all are. Because the Bible talks about how the veil was torn and we now all have access to the holies of holies. And how in the last days, God will pour out God's spirit upon all. Your sons and thy daughters will prophesy. It didn't say your straight sons and your straight daughters. It says, and all will prophesy. Now, I'm not trying to push a particular agenda. What I'm saying is that we must get to the place to where we allow God to be God and we be who God's created us to be, humans who worship.
And you know what? So I say this all the time to my friends who disagree with me in terms of how I feel about sin and sexuality. I know folks who are same gender loving, who do not believe that who believe that their lifestyle is a sin, right? It is still in the back of their head that they should not be gay. I don't believe that, but they believe that. The problem that I have with church folks are you have people who believe that and who want to live better for whatever it's worth. But church folks so nasty till they even reject these folks, right? How they handle them is done so evil and so nasty till they can't find love nowhere. For me, that's the missing of the mark.
That's missing the mark. Since we're here, I want to talk about those that consider themselves to be affirming Black spaces and how heteronormative is the dominant, to where you find those who are LGBTQIA, those that don't identify with the first, the LG, skip the B and the T, they're just the LG, because now they're questioned about being bisexual or being transgender. I've heard affirming pastors mishandle individuals even in that space of sexuality. I've heard, and that's hard for me to watch too, because when you said not able to find spaces to be loved, here is this pain that they're carrying because now it is evident, this counterfeitness of what we say is going to be loving you no matter what.
I've worked in spaces where I thought we were affirmative, and I thought I could be who I was and be that person freely. But I quickly learned that that wasn't the truth. What was the blessing for me was I also realized that we weren't affirmative just in terms of sexuality. We weren't even affirmative in terms of our own Blackness and who we were. So for me,
he couldn't be in that denomination and keep the money flowing. I'm sorry. I'm not going to tell you.
I mean, I don't know. I debate it. But I just can't say it enough. I think we miss it because we're so busy talking and nobody's pausing to say, hey, how do we just engage? Let's just have a conversation. Who are you? Who am I? I don't think nobody listening. We avoid them. And who we really need to avoid is ourselves. That's who we need to avoid.
Well, we have 5 minutes on the timer before we reach an hour. But as far as time is concerned, we have gone over by 3 minutes. We're going to finish the 5 on the timer and get to 60 on the timer, or the 4.5. And so we would have gone over a little bit. But Sam, please, we're going to have to bring you back, because some people who are asking for this are not here to have this conversation. And there were some questions we didn't get to answer or ask. And every time you come on, people love to hear you. And our platform is not huge, but you're welcome anytime. And I just want, and what I'm trying to say is, can we not wait another year before we get you back on? Can we go? Can we get you on in like 2 or 3 more months? And I know who to get to call you now. I know to get Margaret to call you. And then you'll text me and say something later, and then we'll just work it out that way.
That's right. Margaret, I called them out. I sure did, because I don't want him questioning our brotherhood. I don't want him questioning it at all. Zay, Margaret, absolutely. I just want to say, I don't profess, and I pray people get it. I had to learn how to be quiet myself. I talk these days because I really just want to be a vessel, and really a gift that's trying to help somebody else find freedom and find God for themselves. I don't think I know it all. I have not come to the conclusion that everything I think is right. But what I have come to the conclusion is, God, I want to be the best me for you that I can be. And I need to be able to sleep at night. And I thank God that I can sleep at night and find peace, knowing that I'm trying every day just to be better in God and in self.
Wow. I want us to leave, because Sam has invited us tonight to become holy listeners. For those of you who watch this platform, that's a big deal. That invite tonight. The invite to not proselytize or not try to convince somebody that your way is right, because just found out in the text that might not be the right way to move. That isn't operating in truth. That offered by Margaret Gunther. It's called Holy Listening, the Art of Spiritual Direction. And Sam offered that all night. And she offers in her book that she really believes that submission to spiritual direction really requires presence and attentiveness to the need. It does not require you to try to convince someone who they are, what they need to be, but presence and attentiveness to the need. She also invites us to welcome the stranger. Stranger does not mean that they are not of God. Because they are indifferent does not mean that they are not holy. If you take the time to be attentive and be present, you may find out that you serve and are in fellowship with the same.
And so I know Margaret's looking at me like, Zay, what you gonna say now? And so knowing my brother, who I love dearly, knowing my sister, I'm going to end like this. Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed, not because of their sexual practices, in that they were practicing same gender or whatever. That is not even, the text doesn't even say that if you really read it correctly. They were destroyed because they were inhospitable, and it says sexual immorality. The sexual immorality was that they were raping and misusing the bodies of women, the strangers in the town, to the point that if you really go back and read the text, when they go to Lot's door and they're asking for the men who come to town, they're not asking them for sexual favors. They're asking for them because they are strangers who they do not know, and they have taken a particular stance that these men just may be possibly coming to take over our land. And because they did not have the conversation and did not
because they only operated from their space of truth.
Truth. Yes, I was getting that, son. You beat me to it. Because they did not know that they were entertaining angels. And many of us have missed blessings and have missed the opportunity to sit with something special that God has sent us because they look different than what we expected. And so I offer to you that when we see people, we take the time to see who they are and to walk in who they are, and we walk with them and we allow them to show us what God has sent them to show us, because it just may be a lesson. That's my offering. Now we can argue it. You can go back and forth with it. I don't have the time, nor do I have the wherewithal to do that. I'll let you go over that with yourselves. But that's my offering to you.
So Sam, thank you. Any last words?
It's on
my brain is I am full. Oh, we got a question before we walk out. So, Reverend Pastor E. Taylor Doctor, we're gonna get your question answered real quick because
Hey Taylor Doctor.
How do you practice this in your own? How do you practice this in your own spaces? Well, and I answer that real quick. I wholly listen every day, and I wholly listen with myself. What internally are my pieces of me, my ego states, my parts of me? What are they saying to me every day? Do I really need to step into spaces? Am I going to be authentic and in truth, or am I going to come in corrupt because I'm going to walk in an inauthentic space? And I have to ask myself that every day. Am I going to be really authentic to me? Because if I'm not, then I'm not going to be able to give out the good that is in me. I'm going to spew out something that's not holy.
I'll add a book I love, Body Keeps the Score.
Yes.
I think learning to feel and listen to body is extremely helpful for me. Like when my arm's hurting and I'm in a certain environment, like what's happening? Wake up and I'm feeling a certain type of way, right? Just starting to feel into my own body and trying to understand what's happening within me is another practice that I'm extremely big on. Just being aware of where you are within you.
How do I practice it? Well, everybody knows I'm a teacher, and I get them all. And there is not one student who can authentically say, I came out to Mr. Coombs and he treated me differently. In fact, some of them will say, I came out to Mr. Coombs and he made sure I had food to eat. He made sure that I had a ride to get home. He made sure that nobody else picked on me. And so how do I practice this? Is that whether or not I am or not, whether or not I agree or not, you are human, and I know the pain that this conversation carries. I'm going to make sure that you're well. I'm going to make sure that I treat you like the person God has created you to be. And for many of them, they have come to me and said, and some of them are watching now, or some of them will watch, and I'll get inbox, is that I love you. And for many of them, that I love you is what brought them back to knowing God in their own ways. Some have come to church and some won't come to church, but they'll call me and say, Mr. Coombs, what does this mean? What does God say about this? Why you treat me like you love me and you know I'm this? And so that's how I practice it. That is my praxis.
Can I add one more thing too?
You
to my community, Black men, Black women, Black people who identify however you choose to identify, I avoid spaces that are no longer helpful for me. That is a part of my space of listening. I listen to myself when I know that this space is harmful. And I trust that there is community and there are spaces where I will be loved and I will be embraced the way I need to be loved and embraced. So a part of that listening to body is knowing when something does not serve me, when people do not love me and love me well. So find spaces that love you and love you well.
Ashe and amen.
That's
I
what
wish
I'm-
Margaret would have added to that book offering Sex and the Sacred Savior, the Single Savior. It's one of my favorites. Let me get it now so I can put it on there. So she can
That's like put it up right.
yeah, so she can put it up there right. Let me get it.
In my grandmother's hands, y'all read that offers that we take care of our soul nerve. That's a real nerve.
It's by Dale B. Martin, Sex and the Single Savior. I dare everybody who is ally, who is LGBTQ, who is in ministry, who sits in the church, I dare you to get this book and start to reading it. It will bless your soul. It will change your mind. It will prick your heart. And along with all of those other two texts that Margaret listed, I just wanted to add that one too.
Yeah, so take care of your soul nerve, everyone. We will see you all next week. I'm excited about how we're coming back on next week, but tonight, sit with this. Take care of your soul nerve. Pay attention. Have some holy listening. Pay attention to your body, where it goes. And in these last days, that really means the stressful days that are in situational change are apocalyptic, because some of us, we waiting on it, boy, looking for Armageddon to happen. It's not the tide is shifting. Avoid them if they're not walking in truth. What that text is offering. So y'all have an amazing night. Again, we'll see y'all next week. We love y'all. Sam, we love you. Thank you for
I love
coming.
y'all.
You pierced the hearts of the people. Did our hearts not?
I wish she could have sang. I wish she could have sang something so they really could have had church tonight.
All right, y'all log off, baby.
I wish she could have sang so they could have really had church.
Oh, did our hearts not burn? So y'all have a wonderful night. Y'all can imagine Sam singing. He really can't sing though. So I mean, if you got a clip up from school, you just go play that, because what he just said is, I ain't got that offering for you tonight. I gave you my offering. My offering was my presence and a book. So words, watch the replay. Again, Sam, we love you. And you are for real always welcome here on Lift Moments while we're on the mend. We'll see you soon. Sooner than later, so it won't be a year out.
In 60 days. We'll see in 60 days.
60 days. That's what, all right.
Give me
Love
the September, because y'all know I'm going over here to try to get focused in these people's schools. So give me the September.
He's trying to be a doctor now.
I'm trying.
Well, hell, we all trying to be doctors. We all trying to be doctors. So yeah. I'm not gonna trust my mama gonna get me, but yeah, we trying to all be doctors,
Sorry, Mom, I would just be cursing. Forgive me, saints. I promise I love y'all. I was raised to respect my elders. Yes, I love y'all.
she gonna receive that too. I promise you, Miss Marla gonna receive. She gonna receive it. You might not get no calls, Zay. She gonna receive it. Love y'all again. Thank you for being a part of our community, and we thank you for allowing us to come into yours. Y'all have a good night. Be blessed. See y'all.
Love y'all. Be bye. Don't hang up yet, Sam.